Point two of today's forum. We are very happy that you join us for this very interesting discussion of practitioners. As you probably know, 3 concurrent sessions are happening right now at the same time, and we are in the one for practitioners. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Monika Fröhler, and I'm the CEO of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, and it's my privilege to be the moderator today. So thank you very much for joining us, and it is my pleasure to discuss today actually 3 things with you. First, we want to recap day 1 and day 2 and the recommendations that have manifested from them and how we actually view them. Secondly, we do want to hear from our distinguished panelists what their unique recommendations would be and what they see as the necessary enabling conditions to make transformative education a reality. And then thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to tap into your knowledge and probe you, because we want to hear from all of you as well. We will use the tool of Menti, and I will guide you through it. You will need your mobile phone, so keep it ready at hand, because we will do a very interactive kind of session. Now, what does progress in transformative education really look like? What are the conclusions and next steps? We have 3 amazing speakers today, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you someone from Pakistan, someone from Russia, and someone from New Zealand, who will be enlightening us with their views today. We have Umer Mushtaq, who is project manager at Little Art Pakistan. He was born and raised in Lahore and is a theater practitioner and emerging cultural entrepreneur from Lahore. He's pursuing currently his Master of Philosophy degree in Cultural Studies at the National College of Arts in Lahore. He's a co-founder of Tamasha, which is a project of Little Art. He has dedicated his life to empower youth and women through theater and performing arts to address key issues such as peace, conflict resolution, and diversity. Of course, he's an advocate for the Sustainable Development Goals and has worked for many agencies, including UNESCO Pakistan, the EU in Pakistan, and also UN Women Pakistan. Welcome, Umer. Our second distinguished panelist is Elena Yuryogia, and she is head of methodology and evaluation at Investment to the Future Russia. Elena started in a career as a program director at Open University Skolkovo. The Skolkovo Foundation is analog to be seen like Silicon Valley in Russia and is aimed at supporting technological entrepreneurship and the commercialization of the research results. So at Open University, Elena was developing and realizing educational programs for students and young scientists and innovators. In 2017, she joined a charitable foundation called Investment to the Future. The activity of this foundation in Russia is to support the development of modern Russian school education, considering the challenges of the 21st century. She's also a senior lecturer at the Moscow City University. Elena, welcome. Last but by no means least, our third panelist is Libby Giles. She is head of global citizenship at St. Cuthbert's College and director of the New Zealand Center for Global Studies. Libby is currently a senior leader and head of global citizenship, as I said, at the Cuthbert's College, which is a 0 to 13 school in Auckland, as a director of the New Zealand Center for Global Studies. She is a specialist in global citizenship education. She's a practitioner and consultant with 12 years of extensive experience in the field on transformative education. She has developed whole school models for 2 ASP net schools and is in the process of establishing professional development and networking support for pilot schools and organizations. Her approach is centered around responsibility, and Libby seeks to empower, of course, youth, young people with the knowledge and skills to think critically, act responsibly, and live well. So ladies and gentlemen, our 3 panelists are introduced, and I do want to turn immediately to giving you a wrap up, basically, of the first 2 days. Alexander Leicht, my dear friend and wonderful head chief of the department on ESD, has actually provided us with a presentation that I will wrap up for you to give you a glimpse of the conclusions that we have drawn from the first 2 days already. So I would kindly ask the technical team to share the PowerPoint slides that we have prepared for this. The summary very much arches around what are the elements of transformative education, and we have distilled from the past couple of days that definitely elements are learning that aims to change the world. That is what transformative education is. We have all agreed that we are tackling 3 dimensions: the cognitive, the social-emotional, and the behavioral dimension. We also somehow concur that it means we are talking sustainability, we are talking global citizenship, and we are talking health and well-being as key ingredients to transformative education. And we also agree that it happens in formal, non-formal, and informal settings, and is relevant for all ages. Next slide. When it comes to the elements and the enablers, the pedagogical elements and enablers, we know that it needs experimental and explorative learning that involves head, heart, and hand. We also know that the curricula need to be context sensitive, tied to the relevant issues on the ground, and have direct impact for the learners and communities. It's a given that something like transformative education can only take place in a nurturing, supportive, and non-violent learning environment. And indeed, whole school approaches need to be sought. It also takes meaningful and formative assessment. Next slide. So what are the challenges? What are the obstacles that we have distilled in these past 2 days? Well, we do still witness a culture of reductionist testing. We are testing things that don't necessarily all allude to the dimensions that we have just mentioned. We also have, unfortunately, quite outdated views on the nature and purpose of education. We still are somehow way back in time and haven't adapted to the 21st century, it seems, wholeheartedly. We also have a challenge in the scattered and unsystematic implementation at country level, because often we have very different levels of implementation, even within one region or one country, let alone a region. We do have also somehow an insufficient recognition of the importance of adult and non-formal education. It's often put at the sidelines, and when people are talking about education, it's often not including these areas. And then another challenge is teachers are definitely motivated, we know that, but they're not always sufficiently supported. And of course, there is also little consensus on how we can measure progress and how we can track progress. And that's also a major impediment and the challenge that we are facing in transformative education. But to end on a positive note, what are the recommendations that have already manifested from the first 2 days that have sort of come clear? Thank you for switching to the slide of recommendation. First, we do need to develop policies that support the integration of transformative education across the educational sector. Second, we need to mainstream education for sustainable development and global citizenship education and health and well-being across the whole curriculum. We also need to enhance whole school and widen them even, not only to whole school, but to whole of community approaches. So an even tougher realm challenge. Recommendation number 4 in distillation of day 1 and 2 is we need to invest in teachers at all levels. And I want to underline that 3 times, we need to invest in teachers at all levels. Recommendation number 5 is we have to co-create. We have to co-create and let students, teachers, and other stakeholders design and co-create pedagogies, materials, and monitoring mechanisms. And 6th, we need to develop and expand easy-to-use monitoring mechanisms that help countries to evaluate progress, setting clear targets, because you can only improve what you can measure. And it is tricky with transformative education. Much discussion has gone into that. But we are here today to shed a light on a practitioner's and hands-on point of view. Hopefully we will get concrete and realistic and operative suggestions from our panelists, but also from you for exactly what's at stake. My first question to you, dear panelists, now is, how do you view these recommendations? Is that realistic? Is there something that you spot immediately that is missing? Or who are the partners even that we need to put them into practice? And I would like to open the floor with Umer. Umer, can you give us your insights on the recommendation?
Hi, thank you so much, Monica. What I think is the recommendations are fine, and then it has all the details and the points which should be there. What I felt is one thing which what I see should be on the top when we talk about recommendation at point 5. It talks about the stakeholders, but what I see is that the parents are missing from that. Parents should be included when we talk about that we are co-creating pedagogies and materials and monitoring mechanisms. It all connects with the students and the teachers. We are creating a stronger bridge between them. So the parents should also be included in the whole process. So this will definitely be leading towards a better space and the better planning system which we are trying to do for the future generations. Yeah.
Excellent observation. We do need to include the parents. Elena, can I turn to you? What is your take on the recommendations? Are you missing something? Do you agree with them?
Thank you, Monica. Thank you very much for your introduction. And I also find all the recommendations summarized by Alexandra important and useful. But first of all, I would like to react to the last 2 points concerning monitoring mechanisms. I mean about co-creating monitoring mechanisms and easy to use monitoring mechanisms. But maybe first I should clarify the type of organization and the type of experience I'm based on. I represent the charitable foundation, which is engaged in the development of education all over Russia, all over the Russian Federation. And one of our key programs, the Personality Potential Development Program, is the most relevant in the context of these days' discussions, but in the aspects of well-being and empowerment of every child in schools and preschools. So I will talk from this point. And over the past 3 years, we have provided training and learning materials to almost 7,000 teachers, and by 2024, we plan to involve 30,000 teachers. So due to this huge, for us, amount of participants, we cannot see all the changes by our own eyes and do need easy-to-use monitoring mechanisms to assess the effectiveness of what we do. But what is more important, we do need educators and students to participate in our regular monitoring procedures. And we see that this is often a problem, especially when we're talking about measurements covering a big network across the country, but not regulated by the government. And when we talk about the measurements of well-being and personal development. Let me explain why. The main way to measure well-being, more precisely psychological well-being, is to use personality questionnaires. Simply put, to find out if a person is happy, you need to ask him about it. And unlike knowledge and skills tests, it is very easy to lie in such a question. That means that in well-being and personality development monitoring, it is very important for us to have respondents who are motivated to participate in questionnaires and are motivated to give honest answers and get the real result. For other types of monitoring procedures, as I mentioned, skills tests, knowledge tests, you can rely on various types of extrinsic motivation. Schools may participate because they were forced to, or they want to compete with others to get a higher rating. But all these types of motivation will be harmful in well-being monitoring. Or if these questionnaires are anonymous, participants may not even be interested in paying enough attention to them. Then how can we be sure that we have the relevant data? What can motivate the respondents to be honest? I think that if all monitoring mechanisms were supplemented with practical recommendations for teachers or even for students, then participants would have more reasons to invest their time and attention. Usually when we organize monitoring procedures, we do that to answer what we should do with the results as the charitable foundation or other organization. But my point is, if we want to involve respondents, participants, we have to give them navigation what they should do with the results. And the biggest challenge, at least for me and in my work now, is to provide these practical recommendations. And this is one of the answers about the next steps.
Okay, excellent, Elena, thank you. Libby, turning over to you. What do you make of the recommendations? Where are the partners missing, stakeholder missing? Is there something else that you want to add? Libby, you're still muted. We can't yet hear you.
Sorry, I think that's right now. Kia ora, Monica, thank you so much. I think actually that all of these recommendations are perfectly reasonable and achievable, but they're realistic, but not, of course, without challenge. And of course, leadership from the top is vital in achieving them, and that could be at a government level or at a school level. Some of the recommendations are actually helpful, I think, in pitching change to leaders, such as the easy-to-use monitoring mechanisms that help countries to evaluate progress and set targets. And the widening of the whole school model to whole communities will deepen the understanding of what it is that we're talking about and empower change. It's a gradual process, but we have to start somewhere. We are in an echo chamber here. While we're at different levels of understanding and progress, we are all at the very least interested and probably on the journey, starting on the journey somewhere. We're dealing with complex concepts and issues, and it's the complex that we have to get better at. The linear assessment-driven education system is ingrained, and it's hard for people to see the value of the kinds of transformation that we're talking about. We need to make that more accessible. In fact, I must say that the use now of the term transformative education is really, really helpful when we're talking about education for sustainable development, global citizenship education, education for peace, education for well-being, and so on. They can get really complicated and not to mention a bit of a mouthful. Part of the investment in teachers could be to recruit from interdisciplinary backgrounds to help break down the silos. The co-creation of pedagogies, materials and monitoring will give ownership and authenticity to the work as well. In terms of remaining challenges, there's a great deal of support needed from a wide range of individuals and organisations also identified as the partners needed in this. So on the cultural reductionist testing, I think it's really important that we make room and timetables for holistic education. And that's really down to school leaders to see how they can fit that in. Outdated views of the nature and purpose of education, well, I think we need to tell the stories of what you're doing and communicate that well. The scattered, unsystemic implementation at country level, well, I think a solution to that is to set up a local organisation that's the go-to, that can draw the threads together, that can facilitate, empower, train, network, and so on, that can also provide support at a regional level. Insufficient recognition of the importance of adult and non-formal education. I think this is a really, really huge problem, and I think that there needs to be the introduction, or in New Zealand's case, the reintroduction of continuing education. The benefits are significant and bring communities together in valuing all people. Teachers are motivated, but not always sufficiently supported. Actually, I find they're not always motivated because of feeling that there is something new to add to an overcrowded curriculum. Expertise is really needed to empower and facilitate. A little consensus to what measure and tracking process. Focusing on measurement can also be an excuse to not get started. If we really want adaptive change and not just technical fixes to existing systems, we need to be brave enough to try some new processes. Establishing whole school models and more pilot schools will help to overcome some of the concerns, as will sharing the stories of students who have experienced whole school global citizenship education and what it has done for them. The support comes from the partners who need to be approached. These include government agencies, IGOs, business, education providers, employers, students, parents, media, events coordinators, alumni, and so on. I could go on, but I won't.
Libby, thank you so much. And it's interesting to see that, of course, from your vantage points, certain important priorities are already coming up in the recommendations, the parents, the methodology of how to monitor, and then also the whole school approach widened, and so many other points, Libby, that you have made. True. Dear audience, this is now the time that we would like to ask you about your inputs. And I'm still waiting for the right slide to be shown. Excellent. So we are in the concurrent session 4.2, and we want to ask you to take out your mobile phones and type in www.menti.com to take part in the questionnaire that we have prepared for all of you. It will not recognize you as like with your phone number or anything like that. You're not subscribing to anything. We would like you to either use the QR code, scan it, and then you're immediately prompted to go there. Or when you go to www.menti.com, you enter the code 62679769. And you will eventually be asked a question by us. You can type your answer and we will see in real time. You probably know that already. In real time, we will see all your answers. So please do go to menti.com and type in 62679769 or use the QR code. I'm giving you a bit of time to do that. And we have the first question already. So, which partners should be more closely associated with your work, but have not been very present thus far? Is our first question to you. So, which are the partners that actually should be more closely associated with you and your work, but have not been very present thus far? You're still trying to get into it, type in menti.com, go to the website on your mobile phone, and type in the code of 62679769. Interesting. So what we have so far from 3 participants is that we have NGOs that are not yet enough closely associated, but also the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Youth. Students are not very present. Interesting. Local universities, cultural institutions. That's definitely something that is needed for the exchange in the arts. And not only there. Local government, yeah, interesting. So there are many local partners that should be more closely associated with your work. Youth, business, private sector. Those in charge of education planning and finance, interesting. Students themselves, schools, administration. So it seems that we are looking at missing partnership at all levels, really. Youth ministries and policymakers, parents, and at the national level, civil society, interesting. Teachers' associations. So I guess what we are charting out here is very much the Herculean task, this incredible diversity of partners that we would want to have on board for transformative education, but that probably are not yet quite there. We have 16 people that participated in it already. If you're still trying to access www.menti.com and using the code that is written on top of the slide, 62679769. Now, the question, of course, is even if we have identified these partners, how do we closely associate them? Who is closely associating with them? Teachers only have so much time at their hand. Educators have only so much time at their hand. Informal institutions, informal educators. So yeah, the who and the how is of course the crux of the matter. Civil defense organizations for health issues on emergencies, climate induced. That's a very interesting one and will become surely more and more prominent. Non-educational branches of government, because often I completely concur with that. We are often talking in a silo. The education ministry doesn't necessarily have connections to the other ministries, let alone the finance ministry. Communities, representatives, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for participating in that Menti poll. That has been very interesting. But of course, the key question is still the how. And I do hope that in our next segment, where we'll again turn back to our panelists, we will hear a bit about that, because we want to ask all of you in our second part, what would be the enabling conditions for effectively putting into practice transformative education for real changes? And maybe you can also share with us, how will you personally go about it after the forum to inspire our listeners and viewers? And I would like to start with Umair. And I think, Umair, you have even prepared a PowerPoint presentation. So please gladly share this. Umair, over to you. And Libby, you're still not muted. I don't know if...
Yeah, thank you, Monica. Now, I have the presentation shared. So should I share it, or the technical team?
The technical people will help
Yeah.
you. So UNESCO technical people, APSIU, thank you so much for sharing Umair's presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the next slide, please, for the presentation. Yeah. So so we were discussing on the points and the recommendation previously, like what should be there and what the challenges and how we can move forward. So what I felt is that there is a missing point, a connection with the arts education and integrating with the transformative education. So bringing two together. So we have the solid progress and the solid pedagogies to do that. So what I feel as a theater practitioner, as an arts practitioner over here, is like over the years we observed, we experienced it, taking the arts education into practice. So you see there is a lot of potential, and then you see there is a lot of change over the years we observed, because we work with the children's. And then we have seen over the years that the children's have, shared the results over the years after 3 or 4 years, what we worked with the children's. And then the children's actually had, the space which we were looking at. So from the next slide, please, from the presentation, I would like to share that how the transformative education through film worked with us, and then what and how the benefits of it. So this is just a background of it, what we do, and then I'll share how we can move forward with it. So films, we understand, and then we know that the windows to the world. So when we go working with the children, you are giving them the whole universe to experience. So showcasing stories from the other cultures, teaching children global citizenship, and sharing the other perspective. That's very important. While working with them, we observed it. It's super helpful for the children. Films as a powerful art form to give an uplifting and engaging experience from cultural and social perspective. So now another art form which we use over here in Pakistan. So next slide, please. So the next slide is through transformative education through visual arts. So we used themes to trigger the question among children, then how it worked with us. The themes can identify such as identify and highlight the identity questions, and then the issues the children feel, and then how the education can help it, and then how the teachers see, when the teachers see actually the themes and the results of the children's work. So it actually helped them to work on the pedagogies for the children. So also the second point of that visual arts says like how it works is reflective experience for children to understand various issues from their own perspective. We used themes on portraits in the recent years, and then we have seen on the paintings of the paintings and the artworks came from the children's were tremendous. It was beyond our imagination, like what students talked about. So it was not just the portrait, but the whole stories behind them. The children's talked about the horror stories of their mothers, their parents, their fathers, like if for example, if the mother is actually disabled and then have differently abled, you can say. So those stories actually opened the question and the debate among the teachers. Then we should work on the formal education to trigger the creativity and also the dialogue among the children. So that helped us. So another point is presenting children as an artist and their work for social discourse to the society. So it's also important. So third, next slide, please. So the next one is transformative education through theater and performing arts. What we observed and then how we worked is it's at the collaborative experience. Theater offers a space for the negotiating ideas and offers confidence building and unmatchable opportunity of creative expression. It also stimulates children's creativity and imagination through theater for young audience. So now the theater for young audience, the theater as a singular art form, you can say, is a collective one. It brings all art forms within. So this helped, and then this all actually worked with us when we use these art forms with the schools, with the teachers, and with the educators and in our society. So we have seen tremendous change over the years in the pedagogies, in the curriculum, and in the behaviors, and in the whole school system. We have seen it. So now, next slide, please. So now, like, what I feel is what can be the enabling conditions in practice for the transformational education, for the real changes. We should partnership with the school. It's super important. The when individuals or government agencies or the policymakers, if they're working and then they're bringing the schools on board with them, that helps. That definitely helps. Next is support of parents and families. This condition is super important because over the years, we have observed if the parents or the families are reluctant at some point, feeling that the art form or the other teaching methodologies are actually not aligning with their belief system or not aligning with the social structure. So that actually, triggers a different kind of debate over here. And another one is an enabling environment that supports art-based ideas to flourish, and a conducive social ecosystem that supports innovative ideas in education and learning. The next one is support from government for long-term impact and sustainability. So this condition is another one which we feel over here in our context is the governments are actually not supportive in various ways. The government actually feels that the art forms are, they consider a disregarded thing. So, the practitioners and we are working in that space. It's very challenging for us when you don't see the support from them. So, and the next one is integration with institutionalized state functions such as education, tourism, and social development. So as my colleague shared, that it's not just the one thing. Then the previous question when we were taking polls from the audience, so Monica mentioned that for example, for the ministries, everything is connected. So let alone finance ministry cannot work. So let alone tourism ministry cannot work. So it should be all aligned with the one goal and the one purpose. So that actually makes a sustainable way towards a transformative education. And then we'll have plenty of other options and the ways to achieve that goal. So next slide, please. So next slide is how we are moving forward, how we in our space, we will go after the forum is respond to the challenges related to COVID-19 and its impact. So the countries like us, which are actually under development, we can say. So we have we understand that the whole world actually have felt and then observed the challenges of COVID, but the countries like us have damaged a lot of other things, let alone from some other basic things. You can say the health ministry and then the health spaces and the systems, but the other things have also impacted us. So the education system, we can say that since we're talking about it, the education system almost collapsed over here. So the schools went online, and then the students going to the school, the ratio of the students going to the school actually decreased. You can say that from 100 to 20% attendance of the students. So this would be very challenging situation. So we need to work on that. So the next point is understand the new paradigm of the sector. So this is another dimension that we need to work on it, because if we don't understand what's the next and what's the new thing, we won't be able to work. Build on partnerships. Yes, over the years and also right after the COVID, plenty of partnerships were affected. So we need to rebuild and then work on the partnerships again. And the next is peer networking and support. Yes, after the COVID and then after the years, the support system actually also collapsed because we went into our own spaces and then we went on survival modes. So that the new networking and then the connections would help us rebuild ourselves and then rebuild the whole system which we are talking about in the education. So identify small steps to be taken while keeping the bigger picture in mind. It's very important. So we have seen the damage was bigger. So now we need to take the baby steps, the small steps towards the bigger goal. It's very important. We cannot jump into the third ladder. So we need to take the baby steps towards. And innovate each stage. That's the thing. Within the 2 years, we have seen the world changing, the technology improvements in the technology space, and then improvements in the other spaces. So we need to innovate our methodologies, our practices, and we need to integrate a lot of things which we didn't work in the past. So yes, these were the suggestions and then the way forward from my side. Next slide, please. That's actually thank you slide. So yes, thank you so much. So that's all from my side.
Lovely. Umair, thank you so much. What I'm taking away definitely is take small steps and have the bigger picture in mind. That's super important. Elena, I would like to turn over to you to hear your insights on exactly this question. How do you view the issue at hand?
Thank you very much, Monica, for this possibility. I would like to see my presentation. Yeah, thank you. And the next slide, please. Yes, I'm happy to share the experience of my organization. I have mentioned already the Charitable Foundation Investment to the Future and our key project, the Personality Potential Development Program, that is surely aimed at transformative education in the aspects of well-being, to be precisely psychological well-being, and empowerment of every child in schools and preschools. The next slide, please. We suggest that the development of transformative education requires a very strong scientific basis. And first of all, the transformation of psychological knowledge into pedagogical knowledge and practice. This is a challenge because while psychology has a number of answers that we need, psychologists and pedagogists speak different languages. So the first lesson we have learned and now are sharing with you is that we need to become a translator and an integrator between these two scientific fields, psychology and pedagogy. And this partly determines the answer to the question we've already discussed: who are the key partners to be approached? Our way to answer was to involve in our program two scientific laboratories, a psychological one and a pedagogical one. Integrating the approach, we create psychology-based educational methods and materials for students and for teachers. The other key partners are representatives of the regional authorities. To be accepted by schools which are strongly regulated in Russia, it is more effective to get the green light and support from authorities. And that is also the way to get the access to regional institutes of advanced training as a structure, infrastructure for training of teachers and school principals. During the conference, several speakers raised the question about starting transformation from the university level of teachers' education. And this discussion supports us in our new activity and vision of the next steps. A year ago, we created a consortium, a union of pedagogical universities, in order to incorporate the tools and values of transformative education into teachers' education from the university level. We are going to launch a relevant master's program at the 16th university in a year, the next year. The next slide, please. I've already told that we have provided training to a huge amount of teachers. For now, it's 7,000 teachers in 600 schools and in 30 regions of Russian Federation. And by 2024, we plan to involve 30,000 teachers. And this experience helped us to identify some of the main problems, the necessary conditions, and the possibility of change. The next slide, please. Based on this experience, I agree with the speakers of the previous days who told that one of the key problems is the transformation of our mindset. And one of the sets of beliefs that need to be changed is the beliefs about the possibility of maintaining a balance between happiness now or in childhood and happiness then in our future adulthood. In our culture, I don't know what is about your cultures, it is customary to sacrifice the present for the sake of the future. There is a belief set that you should sacrifice a happiness of carefree childhood for a happy adult life, not seeing how one grows out of the other. As a result, we are faced with the fact that for many people, happiness and well-being as a task of education are questionable. And here is what Alexandra summarized about outdated views of the nature and purpose of education. We believe in our organization, and our goal is to show, to prove that only by creating conditions for well-being of children here and now at school, we may provide them with those resources that will help them to maintain their well-being in the adult life. And, we've got the first evidence in our practice about that, but still need more. And I hope that materials of the forum, of this conference, will support our next steps in this direction. The next slide, please. One of the reasons why some people are so skeptical about well-being, I think, is the fact that well-being is often perceived as hedonism, pleasure, positive emotions, how a person feels. And positive emotions are important, but another important component of well-being that might be unnoticed is the eudaimonic well-being, associated with self-realization, flow, pleasure induced by activity, intrinsic motivation. This component is maybe much more important. And our experience shows that it is necessary to spread this more complex and holistic understanding of well-being to make it closer to educators. But there still might be a question, is it possible to maintain the balance between these two aspects of well-being, between emotional happiness and successful self-realization? Our answer is yes, and let me show you our way to handle with it. The next slide, please. According to our scientific basis, there are two types of well-being factors, extrapersonal and intrapersonal. The extrapersonal is the environment, if we understand it in the most complex way, including psychological climate at school, social interactions, formal and informal rules, and physical environment. As a child grows up, the role of the environment for well-being and motivation decreases. You can see it on the slide, and the role of interpersonal factors increases. For us as educators, this means that if we want a child to be happy at school right now, we should focus on the environment. If we want them to be happy after school, in their adulthood, we should focus on their personal development. The good news is that these two tasks have some common solutions. The next slide, please. This interpersonal factor, which allows us to keep the balance between happiness and success, present and future, according to the investigations and research of Russian psychologists, is called personality potential. I have no time to tell about this concept in details, but I just need to say that personality potential is a meta resource, the ability to manage abilities and distribute one's unique set of resources, which includes abilities, competences, skills, and knowledge. And this is a difference between personality potential and, for example, soft skills. The next slide, please. Here is a model of targets of personality potential development in education that we use. You may see that it includes some skills, techniques, and algorithms on the bottom layer. But what is more important is that there is a layer including the belief sets and attitudes toward oneself, the world, ways of acting. And while we may use dedicated courses or integration of some elements and methods into subject teaching to train skills and all this bottom layer skills, but to change the belief sets, we need something more. And this may include modeling, I mean, a teacher as a role model, and the ways we use culture, the way we use language, the way we use space and time in educational process. And in fact, here we come again to environmental factors. So we have made a cycle. The next slide, please. Fortunately, the same environmental factors support well-being and personality potential development. Here we're based on theory of self-determination, which consider three basic psychological needs that are related to intrinsic motivation, effective functioning, high-quality engagement, and psychological well-being. So there are three psychological needs. The first is autonomy, or the belief that one can choose their own behaviors and actions. The second is competence, when one is able to work effectively as they master their capacity to interact with others. And the third is relatedness, so the need to form strong relationships or bonds with people around. And this model is an effective tool for assessment of educational methods. The next slide, please. It may be not only methods, not only techniques, but also to assess the styles of pedagogical communication, which is the way that a teacher acts in absolutely usual situation, when starting or finishing a lesson, giving a task, a mark, and so on. And we may distinguish two pedagogical communication styles that support autonomy and competence, the green ones on the slide, and other two that do not support, red ones. And to change your communication style, you do not need new teaching materials, new curriculum, or new classrooms or school buildings. So this may be the first step towards the transformative education. Small step with a huge effect. And this effect was supported by different research and investigation. The next slide, please. The style of communication determines whether the child needs for autonomy and competences will be met. Satisfaction of these needs provides intrinsic motivation to study and as a result, academic progress. But what determines whether a teacher uses a constructive style of communication with a child or not? The style of a teacher's communication is largely determined by the motivation and attitudes of a teacher himself. And during the conference, we often mentioned these two important factors, motivation and mindset of teacher. And yesterday, the final session, the question was raised how to motivate, to inspire a teacher, and many wonderful answers were given. Our answer is based on the same theory of self-determination. Behind the motivation of a teacher, the satisfaction of his basic psychological needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness for teacher. And the next slide, please. And as when we talked about students, the teachers are responsible to about satisfaction of their psychological needs, maybe. And when we talk about teachers, the management team may help them to be happy, to have their well-being and motivation. And this determines two steps for us and our recommendations for you. To begin with involving the school's management team in environmental projects, in the creation of a common school culture and organizational culture in which the psychological needs of all participants are met. So this is whole school approach that was mentioned today. And then to provide training of teachers aimed not only at their professional but also personal development. And based on our experience, it takes a long time. For example, for us, it takes a year from the moment when we start to work with the management team before teachers start working with children. And it's not the end. It's very important to support schools in the process of transformation after the training. And our next step, based on the discussions and the recommendations of summarized by Alexandra, is whole of communities approach. Now we feel that this is our limitation. We don't use this power enough to spread from communities at school to network all over the Russian Federation. We hope that it will work. The next slide, please. And it is the last one. I've already told that it is very difficult for us to measure the results, but fortunately we have some results, and we provided our pilot research with 100 of organizations, and we have measured that all these activities really give change. We see the change in environment, in teachers' motivation, communication styles. We see they have more growth mindset. And we also see the changes in children's soft skills, 4C and social emotional skills. Now we are waiting for the results of children well-being and motivation monitoring. But of course, we need more new, easy to use monitoring tools. I hope for the community to help with it for us. And but the good point is that the changes are possible. It was proven. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Elena. We are running already late in time, but I know we are all eagerly waiting for Libby to share with us what would be the enabling conditions for effectively putting into practice transformative education, and how will you go about it after the forum? Libby, over to you.
Thank you, Monica. Can I have my presentation up, please? The intention to transform education must be clear and authentic, and the commitment to sustainable development, global citizenship, health and well-being needs to be taken seriously. These are not just nice things to do, but are requirements as set out in Target 4.7, as well as other local and international instruments. Students need safe and equitable learning environments that advance knowledge, skills, and well-being. What we want is for people to think critically, act responsibly, and live well. In order to do that, it is vital to have psychologically, physically, and spiritually safe environments in which to explore big questions around who we are, our relationships with each other, and how we ought to live. There also needs to be equity in resources and access to the internet. So what support is needed to do this? Significant support is required to ensure these conditions. On a micro level, within schools or other places of learning, leadership is vital. There needs to be full support from senior leadership to establish a whole school model as a framework through which to embed transformative education in the curriculum, pastoral care, and operations. Without such support, there is not adequate buy-in from staff and the wider school community. Staff and student leaders need to be appointed. Student leadership will help to introduce cultural change in the school. They become familiar with the language quickly, and the adults will pick it up from them. Organisational behavioural change is crucial and can only come about with full support from leadership. Paying lip service to the principles of global citizenship and sustainability will not do. Behavioural change is not easy, expert support is required, and members of the community need to feel valued. Everyone needs to understand the need for change before they can change, and everyone needs to know that they have the power to change. Adequate resourcing and spaces are necessary for learning, connecting, and collaborating. Training is needed at all levels, for example, staff, professional development, workshops and conferences for students, staff, and parents. Partnerships, the all-important. Could I have the next slide, please? As we know, transformative education exists in its parts all over the place, but it is often small-scale, isolated, poorly resourced, and lacking in guidance and expertise. We need to join the dots, value what's already going on, and support with expertise and through partnerships. Siloed individuals and organisations, no matter how enlightened and active, won't change society alone. It will be the relationships between them that bring systemic change. There is a groundswell of interest in New Zealand with a number of organisations prioritising global citizenship education. A number of us are now working on drawing those organisations together for a common purpose while maintaining unique perspectives. There needs to be strategic planning and support across all sectors, central and local government, intergovernmental organisations, business, academics, and civil society. The image on the right of my presentation is a local representation of global citizenship constructed at a forum facilitated by Education New Zealand that brought together people from all of those sectors. It embodies the head, heart, and hands domains of learning, Māori perspectives and regional identity. Our global citizen pictured here is a change maker who is critically reflective, versatile, and future focused. The value of the partnerships and collaboration we are engaging in now must not be underestimated. Organisations like UNESCO, UPSU, the Ban Ki-moon Centre for Global Citizens, and so on. The ASP.NET has the structure and potential to further develop partnerships and collaboration. There is so much opportunity for piloting transformative programs. This education is not limited to schools and university. It is lifelong learning, and partnership with business and other organisations will not only help enable the conditions for the transformative education in schools and universities, but will empower the adults of those organisations to think critically, gain wisdom, and act as responsible global citizens. Next slide, please. So this is quite fairly brief from me, and I do have a few takeaways for you. When setting up a whole school model of global citizenship education or transformative education, give it a name, a home, and leadership. You can shape it the way that is right for your school or your organisation. Value what's already going on. Start small and communicate well. While there are core principles and goals, there is no set model. Empower teachers and students to be involved using a variety of strategies such as design thinking. So, for example, at my school, we use the design thinking model to bring climate education into our whole school global citizenship education model. We did that by bringing in experts on the science and a psychologist on eco-anxiety. Present were students, teachers, support staff, and parents who brainstormed to map out what we're already doing and how we can do more. And from there, the teachers were able to create prototypes. We've developed teaching and learning guidelines that align global citizenship education to the traditional learning areas. This is enormously helpful for teachers. And we've also, we do have a person, me, but it can be anyone in any school who is in charge of this, so that actually there is somebody who has time to interact with all of those other agencies. It's really impossible to expect every teacher to be doing that. We've also initiated a carbon zero, we're on a carbon zero journey with an accrediting organisation, and this is something that really, really involves the whole community. It's a really, there are so many learning opportunities within this, and it brings together the operations and the learning of the school. Another concrete example of something that we've implemented is Love and Diversity Week. This grew out of the International Pink Shirt Day that some of you that you'll be familiar with. That's about anti-bullying, but we decided to extend the idea and celebrate love and diversity in all its kinds. And this has quickly become a tradition in the school and grown each year. And it's resulted in a real depth of understanding and commitment to living well together. Transformative education needs to be grounded in local realities and in recognition of Indigenous knowledge. In New Zealand, that means alignment with the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, our founding document, and partnerships with Māori. Chief Māori Advisor to Education New Zealand, Carl Wixton, sets out 10 points that explores global citizenship from a Māori perspective to provide context. A concrete example from Te Ao Māori, or the Māori world, is the pōwhiri. The pōwhiri is a welcome ritual that weaves people together. It explores identity and connections. It openly shares knowledge, with the goal of coming together as one whānau, or family, and cementing long-term bonds. Last slide, please. He waka eke noa. We are all in this together. Ngā mihi, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Libby. Dear audience, the time is running. We do have yet another question to you, and we would like to hear you on Menti again. So please do grab your mobile phones, and we will have another question that is the following. What do you consider to be the most important factor in transformative education? Give us 2 to 3 words from your practitioner's perspective. The same code as last time. What is the most important factor in transformative education? And I see you're already participating. This is great. Give us your 2 to 3 words from a practitioner's perspective. What is mentioned is inclusivity, support to the teachers, practical material, support, clear objectives, responsibility, willingness to change, heritage, self-awareness, wellness, good practices. And I'm eager to read more. So do log on to your mobile phone and menti.com and put in the code 62 67 97 69. What we have heard, obviously, from our 3 distinguished panelists from various regions of this world is very much that. More support is needed. We do need a shared vision and probably go to that shared vision with small steps, science-based. We heard that from Elena very, very strongly. We need partnerships. We need collaboration. Libby was very strong on that one as well. Whole school enlarged to whole community. We do need, of course, the knowledge, the responsibility. I'm reading from your answers. We need the willingness to change. I already mentioned that. Self-awareness. The right social structures, absolutely. And it's interesting what I recall from Umer's presentation, social structures that also include the arts, that see the arts as part and parcel of this, with theater being one piece that definitely can unify many forms of art. What I take from Elena is that we do need to monitor, and the psychological well-being needs to be monitored, and that's very tricky, because it has the psychology and the pedagogy sort of strands. So yeah, what is important? What are important factors in transformative education for you? Flexibility. The big ones that remain in the middle are partnerships and support. And I think you're right. Support means top down, but also bottom up. Top down, we mean the governmental support. We need the cultural change in mindset and partnerships, peer-to-peer learning, partnerships between unusual partners probably. We have heard from you before, we need more NGOs, we need more private sector, we need more school collaborations. We do need teachers' unions. We have heard about you saying that we need ministries, intersectional ministries. So lots is coming from you. 20 people already participated. Partnerships and support remain to be the key ones. Autonomy is an interesting one. How much autonomy do we need to actually put transformative education into place? Another third big component, support partnerships, shared vision. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, particularly this whole discussions that we have witnessed these past couple of days and even today as practitioners, the shared vision is key. What does transformative education entail? And I think some of the recommendations that Alexander has put forward and that have now been added to by our panelists create that shared vision. And I liked what Libby said, where she made a comment on the usefulness of the term of transformative education, enshrining ESD, GCED, well-being, but also peace, conflict resolution. There are so many components to that that are encompassed in this transformative education vision. Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. This actually brings us to almost an end of this session. And I would like to ask our three panelists still in the last remaining 4 minutes, can you give us in 1 or maximum 2 sentences what you want to leave the audience with? What is what they need to retain from your intervention? And I would like to start, as I have done now all the time with Umer, go to Elena and have Libby with the last words. 2 sentences. What do you want the audience to leave with? Umer, over to you.
2 sentences. It's very tricky, but yes, still it's open-mindedness and then like open. Yeah, the second, I think the open-mindedness and then the receptive to the innovation and the new technologies and the new methodologies.
I love that. Umer, brilliant. Openness, new methodologies, technology. Elena, over to you. What are your 2 appeals, messages to the audience?
We start with the management team, mentions the environment, and the belief set and the mindset of teachers is crucial.
Excellent. Management, very concrete, like your advice, very concrete. Start with the management team, and the teacher's mindset is crucial. Libby, the last words to you before we close this session.
Well, if there isn't any leadership already, then I think you need to start it yourself. So I think you should be empowered to lead in this space.
Brilliant. So to all of you out there, become the leaders. If there is no leader, don't wait for it to come around. Don't ask what the system can do for you. Be the one that changes the system. Thank you so much for this very interesting session on transformative education and the practitioner's point of view. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely learned a lot. Thank you so much to the organizers as well and the technical support. All the best for the proceedings of today. Thank you. Bye.